Well, Dr. Stan back here at the Genesis Communication Network, coming to you from the hills overlooking beautiful and picturesque Monterey Bay and bringing you the news behind the news, the story behind the story. Hoping to convince you that reality is usually scoffed at and that illusion is usually king. But in the battle for survival of Western civilization, it's got to be reality, not illusion or delusion, that'll determine what the future will bring. And I have to remind you the views expressed here are not necessarily those of the owners, management, staff, sponsors, or supporters of the station you're listening to. They happen to be my views. And well, for the next hour, they're going to be views of Pastor David Whitney, and we're going to be talking about our amazing Constitution. Now, there is a conscious effort to discredit the Constitution today, and people will tell you about the Articles of Confederation and how the people were never supposed to draw up the Constitution, but they went ahead and did it anyway. And there were a lot of people who were worried about the Constitution at the time. They were called the Anti-Federalists because they said, why, this could eventually lead to tyranny. But it didn't lead to tyranny until about 50 years ago. It worked, and it worked incredibly well, until, of course, the Brotherhood of Darkness took over control of the media and then began to circumvent the Constitution because, of course, the Constitution worked because it limited the power of the central government, and there were very, very few things that the Congress could do. In fact, they usually only met for a few weeks every year, and then as time went by, the wicked people who wanted a dictatorship gradually expanded the power of government to where we are today, to where most of what's done in Washington, D.C. is done by traitors, by subversives who have sworn to uphold the Constitution and are doing everything they can to destroy it. Well, if we're going to take America back, the first thing we're going to have to do is understand this amazing form of government we have, and then call the people, the subversive element in Washington, D.C., just what they are, traitors to our country, of people who are working to bring about a world government to destroy Christianity. That's why they took God and prayer out of our schools, Bible out of our schools, Ten Commandments out of our schools. They knew exactly what they were doing, and they worked concertedly through a number of organizations, and that's what I call the Brotherhood of Darkness. But to get back to the basic subject of the Constitution, Pastor David Whitney, you pick up the story.
That's Dr. Stan, and you're absolutely right. The subversives who really wanted to destroy our constitutional republic really began to turn it on high gear about 60, 50 years ago. But before that, there was those who were laying groundwork for that kind of destruction in some of the subsequent amendments. Last time we were talking about the 14th Amendment and the 15th Amendment, which, as we shared, were not really legally ratified because the states who voted against these amendments initially in the South had their governments destroyed and puppet governments installed that then proceeded to vote for these amendments. So that's no way to ratify a legitimate amendment to the Constitution. Nonetheless, the 14th Amendment brought in sweeping changes and aggrandized enormous amount of power in Washington, D.C., and subsequent misinterpretations of that 14th Amendment, specifically the incorporation doctrine, actually further empowers Washington, D.C. to force the states to do what Washington, D.C. wants those states to do. Perhaps Arizona is the most recent example here of a state that says, hey, we're going to uphold the law in our state. We're going to follow the law. And the federal court says, oh, no, you can't follow the law. We're the federal government. We're going to tell you what to do even if the law says the opposite. And it's a perfect example of the kind of power that has been coalesced in Washington, D.C. to the destruction of our constitutional republic, to destruction of law, actually, where there's an example where they're breaking the law, Washington, and suing the state of Arizona, which is trying to follow and apply the law. So it's just way, way beyond the looking glass.
And I think it's so important people understand the people in the Tea Party movement, which really had a tremendous impact upon the last election. These are good people. Some are Democrats, some are Republicans, some are black, some are white, some are Hispanic, but they know something's wrong in our country. They just don't know what's wrong. because they don't understand the Constitution. They don't understand the Brotherhood of Darkness. They do not understand the subversive movement in our country because, of course, the media is tightly controlled, and the major mainline pundits, both liberal and conservative, will never tell you the things that you'll hear at Radio Liberty. So you pick up the story, David, as we get back to the foundation, because certainly when they passed the 14th Amendment, the people who passed it never intended for this to apply to bring all the various stipulations of the Bill of Rights to the states. It had only to do with certainly the right of slaves to have the same rights as everybody else, and they say that eventually down the line to have the same right to vote down the line, because that was many, many years later. But it was never to take the Bill of Rights and apply it to the states. The Bill of Rights was to limit the power of the federal government, and matters having to do with life and liberty and property were to be dealt with at the state or the local level. But of course they've gotten away from that completely, and of course now they apply all the things in the Bill of Rights, the restrictions on the power of Congress to the states, except for things like guns. And of course they want to take away the guns, so they simply just change the interpretation of the Constitution any way they want to, because it's all about moving towards a dictatorship. They know what they're doing. They just don't want the public to know. You go right ahead.
That's right. And so the 14th Amendment was shortly followed by the 15th Amendment, which basically gave voting rights to former slaves, that a U.S. citizen may not be deprived of a right to vote because of race, color, or previous servitude. And you'll recall the 14th Amendment defined a citizen as one who was born in our land. That is, the federal government was telling the state governments who their citizens were to be. And but jumping a number of decades, that was 1870, the 15th Amendment, there was not a successful amendment. There were some attempted amendments, but none successful until 1913. And actually, I should put successful in quotation marks, because the evidence is that the 16th Amendment, what most people think of as the Income Tax Amendment, that this amendment was not legally ratified. And that's an astonishing thought. The 16th Amendment and the 17th likewise was not legally ratified, and the basis for that statement sounds like an outrageous statement. The basis for it is the research done by one Bill Benson. He went to all the 48 state archives, and at that point in time, 1938, Alaska and Hawaii had not joined the Union, so there was 48 states. He went to each state archive to research the records regarding the ratification of the 16th Amendment and the 17th Amendment. He discovered an amazing thing. Some states said they voted it down. That is, they said, we did not ratify this. But it was reported to Washington, D.C. by some liar, or maybe Washington, D.C. was the liar, not sure all the details there, but it was reported as if they had ratified it when indeed their legislature voted it down. Other states received the 16th Amendment, and they didn't like the wording of it, or they decided to make some changes in various elements of it, and so they passed a bill that was not the 16th Amendment that was handed to them. It was the 16th Amendment that they concocted, and basically saying, Washington, you need to revise this amendment before we as a nation will ratify this amendment. And there's a number of those kind of defects. Some states did not follow what their state constitution required of their state to legally ratify an amendment. In other words, certain signatures had to be on the amendment. Perhaps the governor had to sign it or whatever. And those rules, those laws, were not followed by that particular state, but it was reported to Philander Knox in Washington, D.C. that the state had ratified it. So he found enormous problems, so many problems that if you total all of the problems, there's only about 2 states that actually ratified it without problems, defects, or actually changing the wording of the amendment out of the 48 states. There's no way, then, that the 16th Amendment was legally ratified. And there were a couple of states, I understand, that have kind of protested this and tried to see some response from Washington. But, you're not going to respond, or you're not going to find Washington responding until all the states are in an uproar and say, wait a minute, if the 16th Amendment was not legally ratified, how in the world have you been taxing us? You've been illegally taxing us all these years. Give us our money back. Can you imagine what an uproar that would bring to our country? Well, the 16th Amendment not only was not legally ratified, it is misinterpreted and misused today, and that shouldn't surprise us at all. Anytime the taxing power of a government is being dealt with. Whoa, look out. They are going to abuse that power any which way they can. You better watch them very, very closely. When we discover the history of the 16th Amendment, it was...
Hold that thought, David. We'll be back here in just a moment. You must understand the Constitution, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to tell you how to learn about it.
Where are my car keys? What did I come in this room for? Where did I put that?
A common condition called age-related memory loss is robbing millions of people of their ability to remember and think clearly. And Alzheimer's and Parkinson's are occurring at younger ages, even early 20s and 30s. And there's much evidence that brain inflammation may be the cause. Brain inflammation may also cause depression and insomnia. But there's great news. Studies show by taking special, powerful nutrients, brain inflammation and its damaging effects may be greatly reduced. And that's why neurosurgeon Dr. Russell Blaylock created his brain repair formula to reduce brain inflammation and maintain a healthy brain. So, for a free book on brain health or information on Dr. Blaylock's special brain repair formula, call 1-800-SPECIAL or visit 1-800-SPECIAL.com. 1-800-SPECIAL.
Hi, I'm here talking with Don Wiskin of HeartDrop.com. I understand that you changed the name of your product, Don.
Yes, we did. It's now Extendivite, meaning to extend your life.
Wow, extend your life. Everybody wants to extend their life. How is it made, Don?
Well, Extendivite is made from herbs gathered from many different parts of the world. We chose 7 of the heart and health-related herbs known to improve your health.
Your heart drops have always kept me from feeling sick or run down, Don. Will Extendivite continue to do the same thing for me?
Yes, it will. All we changed was the name. I'm here because at 42 I had a heart attack and the garlic cayenne drops gave me back my life.
We have been talking with Don Wiskin about his exciting new product called Extendivite. To get your Extendivite, call 1-877-928-8822. That's 1-877-928-8822. Or visit his website at heartdrop.com. That's HeartDrop.com.
Now you can enjoy the most delicious, freshest, and healthiest drinking water anytime, even while traveling, during outdoor sporting activities, and in hospital filtration environments such as local or national emergencies. The revolutionary Berkey Light removes pathogenic bacteria, cysts, parasites, and harmful or unwanted chemicals to below detectable levels. It also removes foul tastes and odors like that rotten egg smell of sulfide, and it reduces nitrates and unhealthy minerals like lead and mercury while leaving in the healthful and nutritional minerals your body needs. The Berkey Light is so powerful it can purify raw, untreated water from remote lakes, streams, and stagnant ponds. The Berkey Light is transparent and glows in the dark with its rechargeable LED lighting system, so it can be used as a night light or camp light.
Get the Berkey Light Purifier for only $279. Call New Millennium 888-803-4438. That's 888-803-4438, or order on the web at berkeywater.com. Not yet available in Iowa.
When making important financial decisions, you should always know the facts. That's why Midas Resources is willing to pay you to read the facts. Midas Resources, a team of hand-picked financial specialists with decades of financial experience who are ready to provide you with state-of-the-art, up-to-date financial services. Midas Resources offers a host of services and stands behind their products. In fact, if you call and order their free Midas report, Midas Resources will pay you. This detailed report will provide you with financial history on the safest and most profitable areas to invest in. If you read the report, Midas Resources will send you a free Walking Liberty Silver $50. So what are you waiting for? Get the facts and call Midas Resources toll free at 888-292-2709. That's 888-292-2709. And remember, if you read the Midas report, you'll receive a free Walking Liberty Silver $50.
Are you tired of searching for great talk radio?
Something more important.
Search no more. We are the GCN Radio Network.
Well, Dr. Stan back here at the Genesis Communication Network, and certainly our guest today is Pastor David Whitney. We're talking about the Constitution. We're talking about the fact that the 16th and 17th Amendments were never legally ratified. I've talked to Bill Benson. Somebody gave him $100,000. He spent several years. He went around to every state capital. He went through the records at the time that they were debating and then passed or voted on the 16th and 17th Amendment. And there were only a couple of states that actually passed it, and they simply lied about it. You have to understand, ladies and gentlemen, the Brotherhood of Darkness doesn't care what's right or wrong. They take us into wars, they foment revolutions, they kill people, and they simply lied about the ratification of the 16th and 17th Amendment. Now, they've actually put Bill Benson in prison a couple of times. Why? Because he told the truth, and they've told him, you can't be saying this sort of thing. It's been around for so long. It doesn't matter whether it wasn't ratified. It's now accepted in America. And I would think certainly if we took a vote on the income tax tomorrow, I could suggest that probably 95% of the American people would vote against it. I mean, we don't want the income tax. It was posted by the people of great wealth. It was passed in the name of, oh, my goodness, we got to tax the people of great wealth. But it was never meant as a tax the people of great wealth. They have means of getting away from it. It was meant as a means of monitoring and controlling the individual and numbering everybody and then being able to monitor them. And that's exactly what they're doing. Go right ahead.
And the history behind it was, as you say, it was sold to the people as, well, here's a way to, tax these really wealthy people. In fact, the real purpose was to bust the trusts that existed that were really illegal monopolies, but because the corporations involved in these trusts, these illegal monopolies, kept their books hidden from the federal government. The federal government had no way of discovering where these illegal trusts were and how to break them up. And so several presidents actually ran on a campaign, Howard Taft being one of them, that said, I'm going to go to Washington to bust up those trusts. We're going to get those rich guys. And, indeed, what he proposed, Howard Taft proposed, was something that had been struck down by the Supreme Court. You see, Congress back in 1893 passed an income tax on corporations in order to bust those trusts. And the Supreme Court ruled that income tax was unconstitutional. That was 1895. And so the Supreme Court rightly said the Constitution in Article 1, Section 9 specifically says, no capitation or other direct tax shall be laid. A capitation tax is a tax on the head. You think of what decapitation, like the French Revolution with the guillotine and so forth. Well, a capitation tax is a tax directly on the head of the individual citizen. So there's no capitation tax permitted by the federal government or any other direct tax unless that tax shall be laid unless in proportion to the census or enumeration hereinbefore directed to be taken. That is, the federal government was never supposed to tax the individual citizen. The tax bill was supposed to go to the state, proportioned according to the population of that state that had been determined by the previous census. So, for example, say Maryland has about 5 million people in its population, and I don't know, I'll just pick Indiana as an example, maybe about 10 million people. When the federal government would send a tax bill, the tax bill they would send to Maryland would be half the size the tax bill they sent to the state of Indiana. And the state of Indiana would make its decision by its legislative process as to how it was going to raise the funds to pay that tax, and that might be very different from the decision made by the state legislature of Maryland as they met to determine how they were going to raise the money to pay this bill. And so you would not have a federal agency, the IRS, ever directly taxing any citizen in any one of the states.
And I think it's so important, David, to point out that the Senate at that time was elected by the state legislature. Mm-hmm. And, if the senator was voting for ever more money for the federal government, the state legislature would simply recall him. They didn't want to have to be taxing the people and getting everybody mad at them. That's why they wanted the direct election of senators, so they were not answerable to the state legislature, so that they could be bought and sold by the people of great wealth. And incidentally, you mentioned that William Howard Taft, President Taft, the trust buster, President Taft was a member of Skull and Bones, a secret society made of the people, the wealthy people who, in large, control our society. Now they're members today. They're members of Skull and Bones, but they're also members of the Council on Foreign Relations, and some of them are members of the Trilateral Commission. There is this ruling elite, and William Howard Taft, who wanted to bust the big trust. He wanted, to get back at those people of great wealth. Does that sound like Barack Obama today? Oh my goodness! We wanted tax cuts for the middle class. We wanted to tax the wealthy. That was what they used with the alternative minimum tax. Remember that? Oh, there were people who were millionaires who weren't paying any taxes, and that's why we got to have the alternative minimum tax. And then what happened? Why, pretty soon, there were more people, very wealthy people, who weren't paying any taxes, but now the tax was imposed upon the middle class. When are people going to understand that these people who keep talking about taxing the rich are really out to destroy the middle class? Go right ahead.
And you're absolutely right, Dr. Stan. There was a balance developed by our founders wisely, because the Senate were all appointed by the state legislature. So if the state legislature was going to have to raise money for, just think of the ridiculous things that have taken place in the last 4 or 5 years, billion-dollar bailouts for banks, and the bank presidents get this huge $1 million bonus at Christmas time. Excuse me? That's taxpayers' money that those bankers that were such miserable failures as they ran their institutions, these miserable failures were rewarded for doing wickedly and miserably as a banker, and the money was coming from you and I, the taxpayer. The state legislatures would never have gone for the $1 billion bailout for banks, or rescue GM and take it over, or cash for clunkers, or you name the hundreds and thousands of bailouts that have gone down the tubes here. The Senate would never have allowed those things to pass, because the tax would have directly been forced for the state legislatures to raise. And those state legislatures, they are a lot more responsive to the will of the people. You can throw them out of office a lot easier than you can ever get rid of a senator, an incumbent senator particularly. So their design was very wise, and the 16th and 17th Amendment, though never legally ratified, when they were implemented, illegally implemented, I should say, then they began to destroy that system which protected us from a greedy, vicious viper called Washington, D.C. that was going to suck the life out of all of us. And that's exactly what
Washington, D.C.
happened.
Washington, D.C. was controlled by the major banks, and that's what it's been really for all. We have a book written in 1899 by Mr. Walther called The Coming Battle, talking about how the banks were going to take over our government, and they took it over in 1913. Right now, we have recent legislation, of financial legislation, so that we will not have problems like we had before, and this is going to regulate the banks. Yeah, it's going to regulate the banks. It's going to make sure that the 6 major banks are too big to fail. You and I get into trouble. We make the wrong decision. What happens? Why we go bankrupt? But not the large bankers. And then, of course, we allow them to take U.S. taxpayers' dollars to give these fabulous bonuses. I mean, we're talking about $30, $40 $1 million bonuses to a lot of the people in the major banks with our tax money, and that has been made permanent by the recent legislation, by the Dodd legislation that President Obama passed. Why did he sign it? Because they put him in power. We'll be right back here with Pastor David Whitney right here at the American Freedom, about the Genesis Network.
The food storage industry leader has done it again. Introducing FDG Clubs and Survival Bucks from the Freeze Dry Guy. For over 39 years, the Freeze Dry Guy has served various government agencies and the private sector with the finest in storable foods and emergency rations. If you've wanted to build emergency food supplies but couldn't afford it, now you can. Go to freezedryguy.com, click on products, and look for the Freeze Dry Guy Clubs to pay as you go. Now you can build food storage without going into debt. Choose from a payment range of $95 to $450 per month. Our clubs work with everyone's budget. Plus, when you join Freeze Dry Guy Clubs, you'll get additional rewards. For example, this month, get 10% back in Survival Bucks on all purchases in the Freeze Dry Guy product line, plus free shipping within the lower 48 states on any order amount. Hurry, go to freezedryguy.com or call 866-404-3663. That's freezedryguy.com or call 866-404-3663. The Freeze Dry Guy, the best you can buy.
As gardeners, we can all relate.
What do you do with all of the excess food that you grow?
Freezing or canning may have been the process you've used, but the good folks at Excalibur Dehydrator have a healthy alternative to preserve the fruits of your labor. The Excalibur Dehydrator will help you preserve your fruits and vegetables quickly and easily, so you don't have to worry about premature spoiling. You can also use your Excalibur Dehydrator year-round to make delicious jerky. And the best part? The foods you dehydrate are free from excess additives, salt, and preservatives, and that's something we can all do without. To learn more and to order your very own Excalibur Dehydrator, visit drying123.com and see how the Excalibur Dehydrator can help you preserve your favorite foods.
Mention coupon code GCN and receive a free book on how to preserve your foods.
Again, that's drying123.com, drying123.com, or call 1-800-875-4254. That's 1-800-875-4254 today.
Introducing the most efficient gravity filter available. You know, if you were to throw 100 ball bearings at a magnet, most would bounce off. But if you placed them on the magnet, all would stick. The same principle applies in water filtration. Most filtration systems force water through the filter at 60 to 90 psi, causing water molecules to race through the filter in less than a second. The Berkey Light is different. Water molecules take 5 to 10 minutes to pass through the tortuous path of the self-sterilizing filters. This allows the proprietary media formulation to remove and reduce pathogenic bacteria, cysts, chemicals, herbicides, pesticides, organic solvents, foul tastes, odors, heavy metals, and nitrates. It is so powerful it purifies raw, untreated water from remote lakes, streams, and stagnant ponds.
Get the advanced Berkey Light Purifier for only $279 by calling New Millennium 888-803-4438 or order on the web at berkeywater.com. Not yet available in Iowa.
I'm concerned about food for my family in the event of an emergency, and I know you are too. Are you ready? Don't wait for an emergency to happen. Put a plan together now with quality dehydrated food from Ready Reserve Foods. For nearly 40 years, Ready Reserve Foods has been in continuous operation, canning the finest in dehydrated foods. Other companies just broker canned foods. Ready Reserve is the manufacturer, controlling quality from start to finish with double enameled cans and nitrogen packing for maximum shelf life. Ready Reserve offers a balanced selection of fruits, vegetables, dairy products, proteins, and grains. Choose from a variety of pre-selected units or order by individual can to customize your own plan. When you purchase from Ready Reserve Foods, you are buying factory direct at wholesale prices. Call today for a free catalog, 1-800-453-2202, or visit ReadyReserveFoods.com. Call 1-800-453-2202. Ready Reserve Foods, factory direct, wholesale pricing.
The GCN Radio Network, providing the world with hard-hitting talk radio. GCN. Great talk radio starts here.
Well, Dr. Stan back here at the Genesis Communication Network. Our guest is Pastor David Whitney. And David, before we go on, I want you to tell our listeners how they can certainly take one of your courses on the Internet, how they can get a host kit, how they can begin actually teaching people in their neighborhood about the Constitution. So how could people get in touch with you? Website, telephone number?
Well, thank you, Dr. Stan. All over the country, there are people conducting our courses with groups of citizens who are learning what our founding fathers, their view of government, what government was for, what its purpose was, what the founding documents meant in the worldview in which they crafted them, the Declaration, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and anyone can do this, especially if you don't have a background in history or law. You're better prepared to do this. We've put together what we call a host kit because literally the individual hosting it is not teaching it. Constitutional law professor John Eidsmoe does 12 lectures. David Barton does 2 lectures, and there's all the materials you need in this host kit, the student manual, the host manual with the answers to all the test questions, all the DVDs. Everything you need is there in the host kit, and you can obtain a host kit by going to our website, iotconline.com. That website for Institute on the Constitution, again, is iotconline.com. And you could order there by going to our store. You'll find many other resources that can help you understand our Constitution and spread that word to others. Or if you prefer to call us toll-free and place your order by phone, our toll-free number at Institute on the Constitution is 866-730-9796. That toll-free number again for Institute on the Constitution is 1-866-730-9796. And Dr. Stan, we're very encouraged across the country as we see classes multiplying. You know, be graduating a class out in Southern California, I think, in the middle of December, and that class is going to spawn a number of other classes in that area. As people graduate, they realize, hey, now that I've learned this, I can do this. I can conduct a class. I can teach fellow citizens at church or even in my home or maybe in the community center. And they gather a group together, and so it's multiplying across the country. And it's a very exciting time as we know that Tea Party people have woken up to say something is very wrong in America. And we're encouraged, as many of them are realizing, it's about the Constitution. And the first step, not the last step, the first step is to know what our founding documents say in the words of our founders. What did they mean by the words they wrote? And if we can recover their worldview, their understanding of law and government, a limited government, and that our Constitution was designed to restrain the government, or as Thomas Jefferson said, to put chains on the government to limit what it can do. If we can recover that, we could take back not only Washington, D.C., but even our own state capitals and return government to a reasonable size where it does not interfere with everything we do and does not tax us into poverty as it's doing today. And so we encourage every listener to get a copy of our host kit, start your own class, visit our website, iotconline.com, or call us toll-free at 1-866-730-9796.
And the second time, the
phone number is 866-730-9796.
And ladies and gentlemen, this is a phenomenon all across America why people are getting the host kits and beginning to teach the Constitution. Now, you're never going to hear this discussed on most television programs. Our conservative, so-called conservative, leaders are not going to tell you about the Institute of the Constitution, the phenomenal job they're doing, the great response, the awakening all across America. This is what the people in the Tea Party ought to be doing. All of them ought to be learning the Constitution, and that would be the basis of everything they do and everything they demand. And, of course, my understanding is that Michelle Bachmann, back there, she, of course, re-won her seat in the Congress. And, certainly when the new congressmen arrive, why the establishment's going to be there, the trilateralists, CFR, Bilderberger, thugs, subversives, and they're going to, provide members of the staff for these new people who know how things work, but they're really planting there to spy on the congressmen, to keep them from getting accurate information, to try to influence them to go along. After all, you go along, you get along. I mean, if you want to get large donations from the banking industry and corporations, why you go along and you vote the way they want you to, and if you don't vote that way, they'll back your opposition. And certainly I don't think that anybody who is not resident in a region should be allowed to vote in that region or put their money into a candidate. Certainly the people living in Iowa should not be funded by Wall Street, or the people living certainly in Arizona shouldn't be funded by Wall Street, because they not representing the people of their district, they're representing Wall Street. He who pays the piper calls the tune. Well, basically, your people are not learning about this, but Michelle Bachmann has said that she is going to try to counter the influence of the wicked people, the establishment. She's going to try to set up a program to teach the incoming congressman the Constitution. This has never been done before. Always why everybody's gone along, but now there's a small cadre of dedicated Americans who believe in America, who believe in the Constitution, and certainly have not been purchased. Michelle is a fearless individual, as is Ron Paul and a handful of others. So I'm encouraged by this, and people out across America should be as well. There is a growing awareness. There's a groundswell of support to learn the Constitution, and I hope you out there across America are going to get involved personally, because it's up to you to get the information out, and you start by understanding what America is about and why it is different than any other nation that has ever existed in the history of recorded time. Go right ahead, David.
Yes, so that reminds me, my own congressional district here, we had a great victory in that regard. Andy Harris, who was a state senator here in Maryland, And while he was a state senator, he hosted our Institute on the Constitution to the state legislature. We didn't have much of a response. He and one other senator and a couple of delegates took the course, and a number of staffers for other delegates took the course. But I was pleased that Andy completed the course. He has an understanding of what our founders' view of law and government is and what the Constitution says, and he won this time, ousting Cradaville, and so he will be going to Washington, D.C., another one to join that cadre of constitutionalists there, and we just praise God for that victory, because here's one of our students who is making it up there to Capitol Hill, and we're praying that he will have a good influence and be able to influence other congressmen as he serves there in Washington, D.C. Well, the 16th Amendment, as it was originally crafted, as it was originally ratified, did not tax citizens directly. It only taxed corporations or non-resident aliens. And we know this because the Supreme Court, the next year after its ratification, in a case Brushaber is the Supreme Court case, they said the 16th Amendment granted no new taxing powers to the federal government. That is, the Article 1, Section 9 restriction on the federal government that prohibited capitation tax, that prohibition stands in spite of the 16th Amendment. The 16th Amendment did not change that. Those who ratified it recognized that on paper it did not change that. The Supreme Court in Brushaber and a couple of other cases recognized again that it did not change it. It was not about taxing citizens. They couldn't do that without amending Article 1, Section 9, prohibition on capitation taxes. And so initially, that the taxing that was brought about by the 16th Amendment only touched corporations and non-resident aliens. Well, shortly thereafter, there was a war. And you know what war is, always an excuse for government to expand its powers. And World War II was touted as the patriotic thing, to pay this income tax to the federal government. We needed the money to win the war, needed the money for our boys overseas, and so on and so forth.
And don't forget that that's how they got the withholding tax. After, it was always, right. You paid at the end of the year. Mm-hmm. Then they had to have the withholding tax during the war. But it was just simply a wartime measure. And then when the war ended, they made it part and parcel of the whole system, little bit by little, increment by increment. They're constantly working to bring us under the total control of the Brotherhood of Darkness. And believe me, ladies and gentlemen, these people have been around since the inception of our country. The objective has always been to use the financial and military power of the United States to bring about a one-world government. And that's why we have our troops stationed in over 130 nations, over 720 bases throughout the world. Who are we defending ourselves against?
Indeed.
Well, many men begin having prostate symptoms when they get to be 60 years of age, so Radio Liberty is offering a great product. It's called Prostate Support. It's put together by one of the country's leading health food manufacturers. It contains ingredients which have been proven to work. I know health experts who take the product, and I use it as well, and I think that really is very effective. In addition, we have a product for women during that difficult time of life. It's called Menopause Support. And lastly, we have a product for people who have chronic difficulty with their immune system and nothing else seems to work. It's called Immune Support. All are available by calling 1-800-544-8927, 1-800-544-8927. These products are compiled by a very reliable company. Give us a call, 1-800-544-8927.
Hurricanes, ice storms, blackouts, and the prospect of civil unrest. When the unexpected happens, will you be ready? Hundreds of concerned citizens across America have already installed wind generators to help protect their families in the event of a disaster. So act now and build your own wind generator with an easy-to-assemble kit from windbluepower.com. Wind Blue Power carries the best battery charging wind generators and permanent magnet alternators in the country. Our 12-volt wind generator kits are also also great for small cabins and campers. And all Wind Blue Power kits qualify for a 30% tax credit. So get your discount now. Go to WINDBLUE Power.com today and enter coupon code RADIO for 5% off, or simply call 800-976-0026. 800-976-0026. Protect your family's emergency energy needs now at WindBluePower.com.
Black Berkey purification elements are more powerful than any gravity filter element on the market. These awesome elements are used in Berkey purification systems, and they can also be used to upgrade most other gravity filtration systems. They can purify raw, untreated water by removing pathogenic bacteria, cysts, parasites, trihalomethanes, and chemicals such as chlorine, atrazine, styrene, and MTBE. These elements also reduce unwanted heavy metals such as lead, mercury, and aluminum. Unbelievably, they even remove small microparticulate from water like food coloring particles. Yet, they leave in the nutritional minerals that your body needs. Moreover, because they are recleanable, Black Berkey elements are more economical than the standard disposable elements, providing fresh, pure water for less than 2 cents per gallon.
Get a 2-pack for only $99 or a 4-pack for only $188 by calling New Millennium at 888-803-4438. That's 888-803-4438, or order on the web at berkeywater.com.
Fight back this cold and flu season with the world's best garlic extract, Ali C. Why Ali C? Because it helps your body fight viruses, bacteria, and fungi. Ali C has been scientifically proven in double-blind studies using low doses to greatly reduce the number, severity, and duration of common colds. Ali C contains 300 milligrams of stabilized allicin, the active ingredient in crushed garlic. Studies show Ali C is effective against MRSA, bacterial, fungal, and viral infections. 1 tablet of Ali C has the equivalent of 40 cloves of garlic. Ali C supports your body's resistance to all types of conditions and can help lower high blood pressure and high cholesterol. So boost your body's resistance to infection with nature's best garlic extract, Ali C. For more information and to order Ali C, call 877-888-7126 or go to garlichealthproducts.com. That's 1-877-888-7126 or go to garlichealthproducts.com for your Ali C today. On air, online, and on demand. We are the GCN Radio Network.
Dr. Stan, our guest is Pastor David Whitney of the Institute on the Constitution. And once again, your webpage is?
OTConline.com. And our toll-free number is 1-866-730-9796.
Okay, that's IOTConline.com. Go right ahead, David. We've got about 5 minutes here.
Well, you know, people ask me if I share this information with them. Well, then, David, you say we shouldn't fill out the IRS forms and so forth. No. I would not encourage anyone to go head-to-toe with the IRS. It's a tyrannical agency. Our method of defeating this unconstitutional and unlawful action has to come from Congress defunding it, Congress putting it to bed, Congress recognizing that the 16th Amendment has not been ratified, and moreover by the state legislatures telling Washington, D.C. in no uncertain terms that they cannot do that which they have illegally been doing since 1913, that the income tax is never for citizens, no capitation tax is permitted, and so on. So it takes an education wave that has to sweep our country, where enough citizens understand this, where enough legislators on the state level understand this, where enough congressmen understand this. All that's got to happen before we can end this unconstitutional, this illegal taxing system. But I would never encourage anyone to go up against them. I've had some friends that have in the past, and some of them have spent time in federal jail as a result of their opposition. And so I wouldn't encourage people in that direction. Personally, I don't believe it's the best way to fight this fight. What we've got to do is fight it with education of millions of Americans. And as we accomplish that, then we will be able to roll this entire system into the trash can, which is where it belonged and where it came from. Well, the 17th Amendment, as we've already said, was designed to destroy the limitation the federal government had upon it by the state legislatures being able to appoint and remove their senators. The senators did not belong to the people of the state. They belonged to the legislature of the state, and they could remove them at will. In fact, there was such a clear understanding that a honest senator, and there were honest and dishonest ones even in that day, but an honest senator would resign if he knew that votes he was about to cast were not the will of the state legislature back home. I think of Daniel Webster in this regard. He knew what the will of the state legislature in Massachusetts was on a particular bill, and he felt duty-bound to vote against their will and knew he could not do that. And therefore, he resigned his position as senator and stepped aside and allowed the state legislature of Massachusetts to appoint a replacement for him. And this check on the federal government would have kept the federal government within tight limitations financially and in terms of all kinds of other decisions that the federal government has made that really are unconstitutional, really are a violation and a breaking down of those chains that were designed to keep the federal government limited, keep the federal government from being too powerful, and keep the state governments in balance against them. And as we mentioned already, Bill Benson has done the research in the 48 state Capitol archives and discovered that the 17th Amendment, like the 16th Amendment, was not legally ratified. But you know what the tyrants wanted. They could not have control over 48 state legislatures. So, in order to gain control in Washington, D.C., they needed to cut that tie that the state legislatures had over their senators. And indeed, because it's not been legally ratified, I believe states could rightly begin acting in the old-fashioned way, the way that was before the 17th Amendment was considered ratified. They could just say, hey, we're going to start recalling our senators whenever they vote against our wishes, that is the wishes of the state legislature, and we're going to appoint those who will do the will of the state legislature and make it very apparent to them if they don't abide by the will of the state legislature, they too shall be removed. And I know it was Zell Miller, who was from Georgia, understood this principle and called for, before his retirement, called for a revocation of the 17th Amendment. And, of course, he was booed on the floor of the Senate and mocked and pilloried in the press. Oh, what a ridiculous idea, and so forth and so on. But no, Zell Miller was exactly right. He had been governor of Georgia before he became senator from Georgia, and he understood the power of the state was greatly diminished by this current system following this 17th Amendment. And if we got rid of it, then the states would have power once again, and they could restrict Washington, D.C. in terms of its egregious spending patterns, in terms of its unlawful and damaging legislation that's passed day after day that hinders and harms the 50 states in the Union. And I think it would be a good move to see the state legislatures around the country beginning to act in understanding that the 17th Amendment, not having been ratified, it is still in their venue and their power to appoint the senators for their state and to remove senators who will not do what their state desires them to do. So we have two amendments that enormously changed the whole structure of our government, the 16th and 17th Amendment, and neither of them were legally ratified, and both of them are damaging to the states and their powers and damaging to the individual citizens and our protection against government. When you ask a citizen in terms of Washington, D.C., what agency do you fear the most? Almost universally they'll respond, the IRS, because they know the IRS is the most violative of our God-given rights. It can treat us as guilty until proven innocent, which no court in our land treats us that way. We're innocent until proven guilty. That's our whole justice system. Well, then why does the IRS get to treat us as if we're guilty until proven innocent? Why? Because Congress and the wicked people behind them want it that way. They want us to be fearful of the IRS and the IRS to be our master, and we basically be the slaves and do whatever they say, give them whatever money they demand of us. You know, it's kind of like a protection racket.
Sure is. We're out of time, David. I want to thank you so much for being with us. We'll look forward to talking to you again real soon.
God bless you, Dr. Smith.
Thank you so much. And basically, Bill Benson wrote a book called The Law That Never Was, and it should be available through Amazon. We used to carry it. It didn't get that much demand for it, but it's important. But you must understand that these wicked people violate our laws all the time, and they get away with it. And now, Sydney, if you want to know who they are, you need to read Barry Goldwater's book, With No Apologies. We actually have used copies of that. That's With No Apologies by Barry Goldwater. And on page 280, he tells you about the Council on Foreign Relations. It runs things in America, but he says that's domestic. The Trilateral Commission is international. And their goal is to take over the financial and commercial interests, and he's talking about the world, by first seizing control of the political government of the United States. By first seizing control of the political government of the United States, and they have done that between 77 and 1977, the year 2008. Every president and or vice president of the United States came from the membership rolls of the Trilateral Commission. Now, that did not happen by accident. Every president and or vice president. Why doesn't anybody tell you that? For the same reason they don't tell you that 6 of the 8 presidents of the World Bank come from the membership rolls of the Trilateral Commission, 8 of the 10 world U.S. trade representatives, 7 of the 12 secretaries of state, and 9 of these 12 secretaries of defense during that period of time. They control our government. You need to get my book, Brotherhood of Darkness. You need to get Barry Goldwater's book, With No Apologies. You need to get Pat Wood's book, I should say DVD. It's entitled The Trilateral Commission. And, of course, you can actually verify what I've told you on Pat Wood's website. And that is, of course, the augustreview.org. And then, of course, we carry a book on the Trilateral Commission written by Professor Sutton. We carry Professor Sutton's book on the Federal Reserve Conspiracy, and it's not simply by accident that prior to Ben Bernanke, 3 of the previous chairmen of the Federal Reserve System, and believe me, he's far more power than the President of the United States, 3 of the 4 presidents of the chairman of the Federal Reserve came from the membership rolls of the Trilateral Commission. Gee, that was, of course, Alan Greenspan, Paul Volcker, and Arthur Burns. So understand, ladies and gentlemen, it's all slam dunk. You go to the polls every 4 years, you vote for the candidate of their choice. If you doubt that, you need to get Professor Quigley's book, and Professor Quigley was the leading historian of the last century. He was Bill Clinton's mentor. And Professor Quigley's book, Tragedy and Hope, A History of the World in Our Time, was actively suppressed. But we do have copies available through my ministry at Radio Liberty. And if you doubt it was suppressed, we have an interview with Professor Quigley. That's in our 4-tape set on the secret government, 4-tape or 4-CD set. So get the information. Our number, 1-800-544-8927. Our webpage, radioliberty.com. Please pray for America. But pray for Radio Liberty for our provision and protection. And we'll be back here in just a moment for the next hour, right here at Genesis.
Hi, Ted Anderson announcing a great way to listen to radio on the telephone. By calling 760-569-7700, you'll be hearing GCNlive.com programs in seconds. Come to GCNlive.com, find your favorite host's dedicated phone number, and hear them 24/7. You heard me right. Every show has a dedicated phone number. Stop by GCNlive.com and bookmark their number today. And again, that's 760-569-7700. Hi, this is Ted Anderson. Have you ever wondered why banks, stockbrokers, investment advisors won't talk about gold IRAs? They've been available since 1986, yet the financial industry won't recognize the value of gold for your retirement. Gold has outperformed paper investments, yet no word about IRAs. If you would like to have gold for your retirement, call 800-686-2237. Don't get left behind by rising inflation and low returns. Call 800-686-2237. Secure your future and call 1-800-686-2237.